Good morning. What is up? And welcome to Club Fantasy's Monday Hangxiety. I am your host, Ryan Weisse, and if you are just tuning into this show for the first time, the goal here is to help you guys get over that big Sunday hangover, hopefully make you feel a little bit better about your fantasy team. And usually the best advice we can give you is just chill the fuck out. And that's the whole point of this show. With me, as always, my co-host, my friend, Josh Hudson. How you doing, buddy?
A little less hungover this week, and extremely excited because my Birds, the only 4-0 team in the NFL, baby.
Yes, I thought we'd be talking about the fact that you're finally home. Not quite.
Well, I mean, there's that too.
Yeah.
And apparently, the hurricane that blew through gave me a better internet connection. So we'll see.
Yeah, let's preface the show that at some point you guys might get stuck with just me talking because Josh wasn't even supposed to have power today and has it all of a sudden. So if you get stuck with me, you get stuck with me. The good news is I have the show sheet and I love the sound of my own voice, so it's going to work out quite well. So.
I still remember the one episode of Mock It Like It's Hot where you
worst episode ever, bro. I think about that all the time where I did this whole show by myself and just I wanted me to shut the fuck up. So I can't imagine how everybody else felt. Let's get into the quick recap and then we'll get into Josh's Birds. So quick recap. I'm going to go over every game, kind of throw out some injury news. So I'm not going to talk about the big fantasy relevant stuff, just injury stuff. Bengals beat the Dolphins on Thursday night. And if you somehow live under a rock, the most terrifying thing on Thursday night was seeing Tua with his arms on the ground, fingers curled up. It's one of the symptoms of a concussion that I still can just never get comfortable seeing. I'll never forget back in, God, what was it, 2007, where Javid Best got the concussion and his arm was just stuck in the air. Like, it haunts me. Like, I don't get bothered by things. It just bothers me. But Bengals pull out the win in that game. Bengals offense starting to come together. Big T. Higgins game. And if that's what defenses are going to give them, you're going to keep seeing that. Then we got the London game.
Still waiting for Jamar Chase.
Yeah, he hasn't popped like last year, but he didn't pop until last year. So at the end of last year. So Vikings eke by in London. We got the double doink from Will Lutz, 28-25 with the Vikings win. Seahawks win an absolute barn burner. I feel like such an idiot. I bet the under on this game on a bunch of parlays, and then it's the highest scoring game of the fucking week. DK Metcalf was carted off.
Did you forget that neither team plays defense? Like, what's going on here?
Right? I looked at Detroit. I figured here. Let me break it down for you. I looked at Detroit as a team with no wide receivers, and they were going to have to run the ball. And Seattle doing the same. I expected just to run. I just didn't expect everybody to go off the way they did. And you know what? Let me stop in the middle here. Let's address this real quick. Faith, Kira's number one fan, is asking where Kira is. Kira is taking the week off, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with folks. She may be taking this show off at Club Fantasy. All we care about is family time and protecting your mentals. Kira wants Mondays off. Kira gets Mondays off. She's the fucking superstar. You'll get to see her on Sunday, Faith. Tune in on Sundays. But hey, while Faith is in the audience and while we have a little bit of opening, I'm going to go ahead and throw this in here as well. If you are not familiar with Faith, you damn well should be. She is the founder of Women of Fantasy Football and one of the cornerstones of Club Fantasy in general. Faith was horribly affected by Hurricane Ian. There are pictures out there, and if you actually click on the GoFundMe that I just dropped into every single one of our comment sections, you can donate a couple dollars that maybe you won on FanDuel or DraftKings yesterday with Kira's advice. Help Faith out of a little bit of trouble right now because her renter's insurance is basically fucking her over, and we don't like that. And we are going to do everything we can to protect Faith. I'm going to drop that again at the end of the show, but if you check the comment section everywhere except for Twitter, you can go ahead and see that GoFundMe. Go ahead and help Faith out if you can.
We love you, Faith.
We love you, Faith. Getting back to the game, Seahawks barn burner. DK Metcalf was carted off. If you freaked out for a second, don't freak out. The guy needed to take a shit. He literally didn't think he could make it to the locker room and had them cart him to the back. So you get what you get with that one. Crazy game. Jets barely suck less than the Pittsburgh Steelers, 24-20, but the Kenny Pickett era has begun, and it was actually kind of fun to watch. He made some mistakes, as you would expect in his first game, and we're going to talk about maybe one of his wide receivers a little bit later on. The Giants beat the Bears 20-12, two bad teams. Interestingly enough, Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor both get hurt in this game, but Jones was able to come back in when Taylor went out with the concussion. Jones with 2 rushing touchdowns makes up for a completely abysmal passing day. The Titans
I want to point out really quick.
Oh, please, yeah.
When you get outplayed at the quarterback position by Daniel Jones, I'm pretty sure you're not a very good quarterback. And yes, this is a Justin Fields statement.
Yeah.
Point blank, period.
My apologies to Faith for following up the please help Faith with the DK needed to take a shit, but sometimes you can't script life. That's just what it comes down to. Titans beat the Colts 24-17. I have literally no idea what to make of the Colts at this point. However, I'm sure there are some people freaking out about Jonathan Taylor. He was dealing with a toe injury coming into the game, and now he had his ankle rolled up on, but they are saying not a serious injury. Josh, have you heard anything? You're a little bit more on top of this than I am most days. Traylon Burks with the foot injury.
I'm still waiting to hear on that. I hadn't seen anything yet from Schefter or Rappaport. Okay. I'm sure we'll get something probably either in the middle of the show or after the show that hits the timeline, and maybe we'll have some more info. If not, we'll cover it on Wednesdays. No pun intended.
Here we go. Chargers outlast the Texans 34-24. Game wasn't quite as close as it looked. Damian Pierce absolutely went off, but so did Austin Eckler. More on that later. Eagles with the win, 4-0, 29-21 against Jacksonville, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. Falcons sneak by the Browns 23-20. Pretty interesting game. Cowboys handle business against Washington 25-10. The Bills just inched by Baltimore, but Jamison Crowder and Isaiah McKenzie left this game, so there might be some slot wide receiver issues there. Cardinals beat Carolina on the road 26-16. Raiders beat Denver 32-23, and if you've missed the news, Javonte Williams likely done for the year with a pretty bad knee injury. Packers barely beat the Patriots, which makes no sense, 27-24, and especially when you consider that Brian Hoyer went down in this one and Bailey Zapp ended up taking over.
He went down early in that one, too.
Yeah, exactly. And Zapp didn't play terribly, and Packers couldn't put it away. I'm worried about the Packers if I'm a Packers fan, Joel. And then finally, Kansas City beats Tampa Bay pretty easily, probably not as close as the final score shows, 41-31. Cameron Bate did leave this game with a concussion, so that's worth monitoring, and he did score a touchdown in the game. But the first section of our show is up with the birds. Josh, talk to us.
4-0, baby. We beat the Jags. I obviously expected that. The one thing, and I heard this literally all day at the bar yesterday. Who have the Eagles played? And it's true. We haven't really played many great teams, really any. You could make a case for Detroit as they're the leading scorer, the highest scoring team in the NFL right now. But also they have the worst defense in the NFL. So there's that. Vikings, throttled them pretty easily. They inched one out against the Saints, which thank you, because now the Eagles, as their 4-0, also have a top 5 draft pick. So that's fantastic. Wow. But you just love to see everything that's coming together, because not only, through the first 4 games, they've won throwing the football. And yesterday they won on the ground. Miles Sanders went absolutely bananas yesterday, scored 2 more touchdowns.
Yeah.
He now has 3 touchdowns on the year, which is 3 more than he scored all of 2021. So here's that positive touchdown regression everybody was talking about. And he's got, I believe, 64 rushing yards through 4 games on the season. So, love that from the Eagles. And we did all that losing Mailata and one of the other interior linemen. I think Dickerson went out with an injury as well. So
the Mailata one is worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, because he's one of the best, if not the best, left tackles in the NFL right now. So, all around good team win. The biggest thing that I found interesting was the usage from Jacksonville, which we'll get to that in a little bit later, just with their wide receivers, because Zay Jones was ruled out going into that game. And, we talk really all throughout Club Fantasy about how great Christian Kirk has been. Well, when one of the outside receivers went out, guess what they did? They moved Christian Kirk outside.
Yep.
And that did not work out very well against a team like the Eagles, who have a really good secondary, especially corners that can cover.
That's exactly what they did in Arizona last year when Kirk had his down games last year. That's the kryptonite for Christian Kirk, is forcing him to go outside. He cannot play outside.
He is he's a slot receiver. And this has been my issue with Juju Smith-Schuster as well, because you put him outside, he's not near as effective as he is in the slot. Because when guys play press coverage on receivers that don't know how to separate, it takes you out of the game. That's just what happens. So Kirk isn't able to use his speed the same way outside as he is in the slot. And this really did set up as a great game for him, simply because Avonte Maddox, when the Eagles, was ruled out before this game, and he's one of the better slot corners in the NFL. That would have opened things up had Zay Jones not been ruled out. Now you plug Jamal Agnew in the slot, where he ran over 60% of his routes. Look at the game that he had. So just kind of some things to pay attention to, and this is why numbers can be important for you not so number-friendly people, Joe Zolo. So yeah, but all in all, 4-0, very ecstatic, and we'll continue to rise from there. So.
I think you mentioned it, only undefeated team left in the NFL. So.
Yes, sir.
That's big stuff there. All right, we're going to move over to the hangover. Sunday, I certainly gave some people some hangovers yesterday. I'm absolutely sure. So these other players are teams that just gave us the big head scratches of the weekend. Josh, go ahead and start it off.
Well, I mean, let's start with Kyle Pitts. I think, what is this now? 3 out of 4 games where he scored less than 4 fantasy points.
Fewer than.
This was a guy that you spent a second, third round pick on. I think it's pretty, you're at DEFCON level, like, holy fucking shit. I'm not chilling the fuck out on this one. This is like DEFCON level worrisome here. So I don't look, I get it. The Falcons won. So if you're Arthur Smith and you're saying, well, we don't play for fantasy football, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this one worked in your favor because you actually won the game. But when he's not involved and you're losing, that should tell you something. And that's really been the story of this season. He has not been involved and they're losing for the most part. So it does not make any sense to me. This whole entire game was really weird. And we've seen these, like, this was not a good matchup game for Kyle Pitts either. And it's one of those things, as athletically gifted as Kyle Pitts is, he still is very much a matchup based tight end, especially this early in his career. He's not the Travis Kelce where matchups really don't matter. In a bad matchup, Kelce's still going to get you 9 points. Yeah, because he is the focal point of that Chiefs offense. And I understand, Mark Andrews had kind of a down game this past week, but again, that's another, like, the Bills have probably next to the Bucs the best defense in the NFL, which goes without saying. The Chiefs kind of threw that one out of the window when they curb stomped the Bucs. But it's just one of those, like, he is very matchup prone, and right now that's where you're at. So I think that you need to roster a backup tight end in the event that you have Kyle Pitts, because you cannot sit here and say, all right, I'm outright dropping this guy. You're 4 weeks in. If we were like 7 or 8 weeks in and this is still the case, draft capital goes out the window. But you have to be legitimately worried if you roster Kyle Pitts, which I do in quite a few leagues. And yes, I'm very worried going into this.
And I think he's probably a redraft trade candidate at this point, because I don't know.
What are you going to get for him, though?
Well, I think you still can get something off of the name. You might not get everything you want back for him, but it's better than rolling him out and getting 3 points every week.
I mean, this is absolutely true. Absolutely true. It's rough. I mean, there's definitely a lot of other guys. Like, I wrote down Najee Harris because we all talk about, like, leading, tied for the league lead last year in targets, and the dude had 0 catches yesterday. Like, what are we doing? Like, I understand, like, Kenny Pickett getting down the field more, and he's not afraid to run, which I feel like was kind of the narrative too with Trubisky, because he's an athletic guy. But they're just not calling these dump offs to him, and more so, these targets are now going to Pat Freiermuth. So if you roster Najee, and I talked about Najee being worrisome last week, like, he's an inefficient running back behind a bad offensive line, and now is not catching passes. I mean, are we sure he's even an RB2 at this point?
It certainly doesn't feel that way. And then I've seen some weird trades going down where Najee's one where I don't think there even is the name recognition, because his struggles are pretty well out there. In a 74-yard week with no targets isn't going to be the thing that's like, I want to buy Najee Harris off of you.
And it's one of those things too. Like, I'm okay right now, kind of pumping the brakes a little bit, because in the event that Mike Tomlin comes out and says, you know what, Kenny Pickett's our guy going forward, which I could very easily see Tomlin saying, you know what, we needed a little juice. That's why we brought in Pickett, but Trubisky's still our guy. They have a daunting schedule coming up. Maybe he doesn't want to expose Pickett to that this early. And Pickett, for everything that he did well, still threw 3 interceptions.
Yep.
No touchdown passes.
And one of them was just bad, like a bad pick on Pickett's part.
Yeah, well, and then there was the one at the end of the game. So, like, we can,
one was
throw
a tip
that out the window. But, and one was a tip. So, like, on the stat sheet, it looks like Pickett really didn't do great. But there's still a lot of back and forth. That, really the culprit in this offense is Matt Canada. The offensive coordinator just has to go. He's fucking terrible. Yep. So there's still a lot to kind of weigh with this. But again, like, if you're Najee, you kind of just have to expect, like, middling RB2 production from going forward. And then my honorable mention here is Travis Etienne. Again, talking about the rise of James Robinson. Robinson did nothing this past week. Nope. And I'll pull this stat from JJ Zacharyson, who does a big data dump on Twitter after every Sunday. But ETN outsnapped J-Rob. Like, it was 24-22. It wasn't anything like too crazy. But J-Rob only had a 46% snap rate for offensive snaps, which was his lowest of the season. And from the middle of the second quarter on, the Jags were trailing in this game. Exactly. This really was not near as close as the 8-point deficit at the end of the game went to show you. So that tells you that J-Rob is a very, game script dependent running back. But on the flip side to that, if they're losing and Travis Etienne's in the game, why are they not throwing him the football?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. If Etienne is playing, more snaps than J-Rob and still not scoring fantasy points, that's a problem.
It's just not good all around right now. Like, it's one of those, like, if you have Etienne in Dynasty, yes, you're being patient because this is essentially his 4th career game in a rookie season. Like, I understand he's still a second year back, but like, drafting him in redraft and season long leagues, it's like, I can't trust this guy. You never know, because you don't know how to trust this Jags offense. Like, they're still a growing team. They're going to have their ebbs and flows from a talent perspective. Some games that you don't expect them to be in, they're going to dominate like they did in week 3. And then games where, you kind of expect, hey, they can hold their own, they're going to get whitewashed. So it's just, he's another one that to me is just a very matchup dependent flex play at this point. And it sucks because you spent high draft capital on him.
Yeah, he would not find his way into any of my lineups. McSweet, I do want to just throw out. Jonathan Taylor almost made this list for me, but I think it's all pretty easily explained with the injuries, and he's going to be in another part of the show. So we will talk a little bit of Jonathan Taylor. And Joel hits a good point, and I'm going to touch on this later as well, that T-Law couldn't really hold on to the football.
Yeah, and it was bad conditions. I mean, it was raining. The weather was not there. So, but again, if the weather's not there, why are they not pounding the football? Like, that's exactly what the Eagles did. They ran the football. So, I don't know. It's just frustrating all around.
Weird game, but it broke Philly's way, and that's all that matters, right? So,
exactly.
For my head scratcher, I've touched on this on the intro. Detroit versus Seattle. Did not see this coming even a little bit. I mean, I get the whole they don't play defense thing. I did, however, predict the Seattle win. I do want to throw that out there. I actually said it on DFS and Chill as well. QB1 and QB2 in the week are Jared Goff.
Dude, in our club fantasy dynasty league, dude, I started Tua and Jalen Hurts, and I have Jared Goff and Geno Smith on the bench.
Oops.
I still won, but still, it's like I have QB1 and QB2 of the week on my bench. Like, how does that fucking happen?
Detroit having 3 years ago flashbacks with Josh Reynolds, Tom Kennedy, and Quintez Cephas at wide receiver. However, Jay Will, RB7, I ate my words a little bit there. And then Rashad Penny, RB4 on the week. I was wondering if we would see more Kenneth Walker this week, and that's why I was hesitant to push Penny up. But clearly, Penny's the guy there, plain and simple. So
he is.
And then what the fuck are the Cleveland Browns doing when you have the ball, 1st and goal, on the 1 yard line? And do not run Nick Chubb on any of these plays. You run Kareem Hunt into the back of the defense and he doesn't score. Then you call a pass play for whatever reason, get a holding call, and essentially lose your game on that round of plays. But I dug a little bit into the red zone numbers, and these are all coming from fantasy data, so I'm only going on the mild assumption that they are correct. Not that I have a reason to doubt them, but the Browns ran 3 total plays inside of the 5 yard line. 2 of them were passes by Jacoby Brissett, and 1 was that Kareem Hunt carry. Nick Chubb touches the ball 0 times inside of the 5 yard line. I don't know if you've noticed, he averages 5 fucking yards a carry and leads the NFL in everything. Maybe run Nick Chubb inside of the 5 yard line. Don't quite know what the Browns are doing there, except for losing on purpose is the only way I can look at it. Very interesting set of play calls there. And Kevin Stefanski continues to make himself look bad weekly, it seems like.
I mean, next to Matt Canada, he's got to be one of the driest play callers in the NFL.
But I mean,
there's no evolution to that offense at all. It's run. Oh, wait, when I should run, I'm going to pass.
Yeah.
and very ineffectively, I might add. So
yeah, you're not tricking anybody.
No.
Next section's the shot of espresso. These were the quality performances that got the juices flowing. I'm going to start with Austin Eckler because, Josh, I know you have some cool stuff you want to lead into after Eckler and Sanders. So Austin Eckler, clearly a fan of the show. Last week we said, we need to see it this week. We need to see it this week. And boy, did we see it. 3 TDs fixes any sort of drought that you're worried about when it comes to Austin Eckler. And then I kind of have to I don't know if it's mea culpa or just backtrack completely and prove that we all say shit in the moment. I would not trade Austin Eckler. I said after this good week, I would get rid of him, but 60 yards, another 6 catches, 109 yards total in the game and 3 touchdowns. You're not going to get what you want out of Austin Eckler. You're not going to get what you deserve. And honestly, this offense is starting to look good. This was the first week where Herbert didn't even have to pop on the injury report. So I am all about Austin Eckler this week. I would not move him. And it was just a shot of espresso exactly to see him play good football again because he's been on the cusp. We just needed to see the end zone.
Yeah, the targets and the receiving work has been there. It's just been the lack of the touchdowns. It's been, very middling performance, underwhelming really from a rushing perspective.
3 yards a carry. He's Najee Harris.
Yeah, and then I saw a report earlier this weekend that the Chargers now think that Rashawn Slater's injury may not keep him out all season. That they may be able to get him back towards the end of the year, especially if they're able to make a playoff push. So they're able to do that. That's obviously going to boost Eckler come fantasy playoffs as well.
Yep, PPR leagues. And then you have Miles Sanders.
Yeah, so, look, the RB3 on the week, and he scored 2 touchdowns. Let's fucking go, baby.
We're talking about an Austin Eckler touchdown drought, and I understand Sanders already found the end zone once this year, but Sanders fans and Eagles fans, they've been needing to see this for 13 months at this point. So.
Yeah, you're not kidding. But I'll tell you, this whole entire week was like a glowing endorsement for RB dead zone candidates, right? Yeah. Like all these guys that we were fading because they were, Josh Jacobs had a great week. Miles Sanders had a great week. Like the list just goes on. And it's like, hey, because up until this point, it was all wide receivers, right? Wide receivers are the ones that were doing great. Running backs were sucking ass. The top 10 running backs in PPR weren't who everybody expected. And I want to throw out this little nugget from one of our contributors, Austin Amendolia. He found a stat on the Athletic Football Podcast with Robert Mays. So 5 teams that won yesterday actually ended up with more rushing yards than receiving yards.
Wow.
Yeah. And for context, those teams, Atlanta, Green Bay, almost had 200, because they had 199. Las Vegas, Philly, the Giants, who they gave Saquon over 30 carries.
It makes perfect sense with them.
And Tennessee, which is hardly shocking because that's what they do is run the football.
See, the only one that's weird there is the Raiders. You would expected more passing out of the Raiders, but Josh McDaniels.
Well, and Devontae Adams had over 100 yards finally.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So
yeah, I'm gonna throw in Brandon Cooks. We've been talking about this. We've been talking about Cooks actually very similar to Austin Eckler.
Target share's been there.
The targets have been there. We just needed him to catch the fucking ball. I think he's at a 44% catch rate coming in yesterday. Yesterday, he goes 7 for 7. It only resulted in 58 yards, but far more importantly, he found the fucking end zone, and that's what you need. Brandon Cooks, big buy candidate for me right now. And we're going to have a whole section about that, and I had other candidates there, but I wanted to throw that out there. I don't think whoever has him right now is going to be super sold on a 58-yard game. The target share has been there. He is going to have a safe floor moving forward, and I think a monster ceiling because they're going to be throwing the football. So give me any Brandon Cooks I can get my hands on right now.
Love it.
All right. And then Josh, another new segment this week. You went ahead and
we got to mix it up because we can't on recap shows like this, we can't really do the same stuff week in and week out. So
and it's going to be completely different. Exactly. Hopefully you have a list of them so you can go back to ones if you need to.
Oh no, I have all the old spreadsheets. So.
I loved it. Josh calls it cream or sugar, and it's your basic buy low, sell high type thing, but cream rises to the top, sugar falls to the bottom. Josh, who you got?
So for me, I'm going sugar this week, and that's Allen Lazard. 6 catches, 116 yards this week. He found the end zone twice over the first 3 weeks. We've seen him get banged up all the time, and he's been banged up so far this year as well. I mean, why? Like, I get it. He's got the one good game this so far. Leading target share guy next to the rookie Romeo Doubs. I'm really I'm not that sold on him long term, and I haven't been. It was always they've got to throw to somebody in Green Bay.
Yeah.
They're getting Dobbs more involved. Christian Watson had a rushing touchdown. They're starting to kind of give him more scripted plays to get him going. He's another one that was banged up throughout the preseason, early in the year as well.
Exactly what they were doing with Sammy Watkins before he went down. The scripted plays are interesting.
So it's just, for me, it's one of those things where, yes, you want to believe in Lazard because he's been there a while. Rodgers trusts him. There's been nothing over the first 4 years that makes me as a fantasy manager want to trust Allen Lazard. 100%. So if you have him and you have the opportunity to move him, I would 1000% do it for anybody that I think it maybe has disappointed to this point, or that actually
go get Brandon Cooks.
There you go. Packers Lazard to go get Brandon Cooks. I would do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, I think you hit on a really interesting point, especially for those who do rankings and projections, is we tend to put ourselves in the who else are they going to throw to shoe. And it has not worked out really well this season. Like, I had Kyle Pitts at 120 targets or something like that, and he's not pacing anywhere near that right now. The Allen Lazard thing, like Lazard, you expect the touchdowns. You were hoping the volume was going to come with it, and it just isn't at this point. And the worst thing he could have let happen was these rookies get on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. We've been saying that. So that's a really good point there. I didn't understand the segment because it's new. So I'm going cream and sugar. And fun fact, I don't drink fucking coffee. So if I did have to
honestly,
drink it,
I don't either. So
I'd say if I did have to drink it, there'd be a lot of cream and a lot of sugar. So I'm going to do both. This is going to be a mildly unpopular because the numbers are kind of there for him, but I am selling Christian McCaffrey. So I'm calling him sugar this week. I think it's all downhill, which is weird to say, but here's why I'm selling him. You got to sell while the price is hot, and the price is hot right now. Everybody sees regular Christian McCaffrey, but if you're not paying attention, he's dealing with the thigh injury. He is a little banged up, but way more importantly, and what worries me, so he only saw 8 carries last week. They're not spelling him still, though. Nobody else touched the ball either. So they're still just running him out there. He's going to get hurt again. I'm sorry to say it. He's going to get hurt again. But the good news is it's not like you're selling a hurt Christian McCaffrey. You are selling a top 5 RB Christian McCaffrey right now. Go get top 5 RB prices. Don't force yourself to sell him. Go get somebody who really wants him. Yesterday, he should have eaten against Arizona, and he ends up with 3.4 yards per carry. And it worries me a little bit. And as I mentioned earlier, the cream for me who's going to rise is going to be Jonathan Taylor. We went through this with his rookie year. It's a little bit different this year because it's injuries he's dealing with. It's a foot and an ankle. They're saying it's probably a high ankle sprain. I equivocate this to the DeAndre Swift situation. A couple of weeks off is actually probably going to help Jonathan Taylor. He's not losing his job to Naheem Hines or Deion Jackson or whoever the hell is there. He's going to get his job back when he comes back, and you hope maybe 2 weeks from now the Colts have this shit figured out and are ready to play some actual football. So I would love, as a manager who has Jonathan Taylor in far too many leagues, I hate tying myself to one player as much as I did here, but he and Kelsey I have everywhere. I would hope they give him 2 weeks off like they're doing DeAndre Swift right now.
So this is an interesting thing with the Colts because going into this week, week 5, they play Thursday.
Yep.
And then they have a full week and a half off.
Yeah.
So, the matchup, not great against the Broncos. They've, consistently had a top run defense.
Yeah, they played great defense.
And we see how great their pass defense has been too, and how terrible Matt Ryan has looked through the first quarter of the season. You're likely looking at another rough game for Taylor. So in the event that he sits, it's probably a good thing for him.
Yeah.
Great time to go and buy low on Taylor. Agreed.
Yep. And I would honestly, if I'm the McCaffrey manager, I would look for Taylor in another piece. If the Taylor manager has Brandon Cooks, I would happily trade Christian McCaffrey for Jonathan Taylor and Brandon Cooks. Like, it would not bother me one bit to walk out with that, as long as I have another running back, because I'm expecting Jonathan Taylor to be out multiple weeks at this point, and you could probably get more from McCaffrey. Morning mimosas. Basically, we're just getting that tingly feeling in the morning. We know something good is coming. You want to hang on to these players. And Josh, me and you, I don't necessarily disagree with who you have here, but I'm going to let you convince me because I have an interesting counterpoint. So go ahead.
Well, that's fine. So my guy is Tyler Algier. I love this kid coming out of BYU. He's got a nose for the end zone. And, he's a fairly bigger back. The one thing I didn't love about his tape was that he runs very upright for, kind of a taller guy. And that's how running backs find a way to get hurt.
Yes.
But I tell you, behind a subpar offensive line in Atlanta, he averaged 8.4 yards per carry against a pretty good Cleveland Browns defense. And I've never been a Damian Williams fan. He's out currently. And that's why Algier was a healthy scratch in week 1, because Williams was the backup. We saw last year how great Cordell Patterson was to start the year and how not used he was towards the end of the year.
After week 8. Yep.
So who's to say that a 31, 32-year-old running back?
I think 33 now, but yes.
33 maybe?
Yeah.
Like, who's to say he's not going to do the exact same thing this year? Like, when I went through and did my projections, I basically accounted for this. Like,
he's 31. I don't want to fuck
31. Well, I mean, even then, he's a running back that's over 30. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It does not end well. And, the usage is there right now for Patterson, which is great. From a running perspective, they're not throwing him the football out of the backfield much, which is really disappointing. And that alone should tell you that wear and tear from running like that is going to wear on somebody like Patterson, who has not really done this exclusively much throughout his career. And for me, that's where Algier comes into play. Damian Williams is a nice, change of pace guy, but he's consistently banged up. He's also on the older side. You need to start seeing what these young kids have. That's why at a certain point, we're going to see Desmond Ridder. That's why we're already seeing Drake London. And it's why you're starting to see what Algier can put forth. So if I have the ability to go out and grab him for, you could probably throw a couple bucks of fab just to get him. I don't think very many people are going to be lining up to grab him right now. And you have the ability to stash him. Yeah. He's going to come into play towards the second half of the season.
So let me start by saying I'm on the same process with you, because I preemptively added Algier in a bunch of leagues last week. And I'm not even going to throw out my normal don't disrespect Cordell Patterson argument, because you made every point there. I'm just worried that Caleb Huntley also saw 10 carries, 5.6 yards per carry. And if you remember, we had Stoner on, I think it was either the draft show
last year or 2 years
ago. The draft show or the draft reaction show. And Stoner was all about this Caleb Huntley kid when everybody was on. I don't even remember who the fucking other running back they drafted was. Somebody who there was hype and he didn't even make it off the practice squad. But Stoner was on this Caleb Huntley kid. And so I'm interested to see how they use these running backs moving forward. If one of the 3 were to go down, I really do like Algier in that situation. So like I said, I'm not 100% against you. And Algier just did not make any of my, he might even make my free agent list for tomorrow, but he didn't make my deep free agent list just because I don't know if it's fact or fiction there. But I mean, you're absolutely right that he handled business against what should have been a good Browns defense. It's funny. We went all what's that?
I was going to say, let me pull up the snaps here really quick. I mean, just looking at the snaps yesterday, Algier outsnapped Patterson and Huntley.
Okay. So that's fair, because when the times I watch Red Zone, that's how I typically take in my football. The times I watched, it was all Caleb Huntley highlights. So
Caleb Huntley did score more fantasy points, 11.6 to Algier's 10.4 to Patterson's, 9.8. But Algier 24 snaps, Patterson 16, Huntley 12.
There you go. So yeah, and the snaps tell the story quite a bit. There's articles about there.
And mind you, the target share went to Algier, not Patterson.
Yeah, don't get me started on the fucking target share to Patterson. I do not understand what it defies common sense that they're not throwing to the guy who used to be a wide receiver.
You don't throw to Patterson, you don't throw to Kyle Pitts. What the fuck is Arthur Smith doing? I don't get
it. Trying to get fired. We stuck with rookies here. For me, I went with George Pickens and Isaiah Pacheco. For Pickens, he is Chase Claypool. He does the same things as Chase Claypool. He just does them better. Led the team in targets, and he's now tied with Claypool on the season. George Pickens, and they showed a connection to rookies. We've seen that kind of connection before. You have the rookie Pickens, the rookie Pickett. Their names even sounded like this is a story made in Hollywood. So I think we're going to see big things for Pickens to end the season. And then Pacheco, it's interesting because, he kind of needs a blowout to do much. But Kansas City seems like they're going to be playing in a lot of blowouts this season. I think he had 10 carries yesterday, but far more importantly, if McKinnon or Edwards-Helaire go down, I think this kid has a real role in this offense. And right now he's just out there in far too many leagues, and you can go get him. And I will be the first to say I was shitting on this kid the entire draft process, that I would have never touched him. I made fun of people who drafted him. I don't want to say I was wrong, because I don't ever want to say I was wrong, but it took a little while for me to be convinced, and now is the right time to go grab him. But if you drafted him, held on to him, kudos to you, because I just didn't see it coming. But those are players who in the next week or two, I think you're going to start to see a lot of value, because we're getting into bye weeks and we're going to start getting into injury time. That's all it comes down to.
I found a fun stat on Twitter from JJ Zachariason, who posted this morning. Clyde Edwards-Helaire now has 3 receiving touchdowns at the goal line this season. Last season, the highest over the full season in the goal to go scenario like that was 2. And Edwards-Helaire has topped that now in 4 games. And you can go all the way back to 2016, and only 2 backs have hit 3 goal line receiving touchdowns in a season.
Is it not? He didn't say who? Because I felt like Kareem Hunt did that one year when he blew up in Kansas City, to where
he didn't specify which players did, but I mean, it just goes to show you how they're using Clyde Edwards-Helaire more out of the backfield, and he's kind of become their touchdown guy. Which,
I was just saying, he's a goal line back. He's a goal line back, which is hilarious for his size, but it's not in any sense of the word that you expect him to be a goal line back.
Absolutely not.
All right, and now the segment that got this show started, and it's time to chill the fuck out. Either a player's not as good as they looked, or they're not as bad as they look. Josh,
it's simple for me. T.J. Hockenson. I mean, no DeAndre Swift, no Amon-Ra St. Brown, no DJ Chark. He was a late scratch as well. He was the entire offense at this point. 39.9 fantasy points. He was tight end 1 on the week. I don't even think he sniffed 7 fantasy points in any of the weeks leading up to this. Hockenson is not really a main cog in this offense right now. He's used to block. He's used to free up space and open up things for Amon-Ra and Swift. If you drafted Hockenson, this is the game that you wanted to try to move him. I'm not saying that I would try to go out and get a Kyle Pitts for him, because I don't really believe that scenario right now, but I wouldn't hate going to get Darren Waller, who I know had a bit of a disappointing game this past week. If you could use him to get Dallas Goedert, that's a guy that I would 100% want to go grab.
And not even straight up, though. You could probably use him to get these guys in another piece.
Yeah, because there's so many of your, average to novice fantasy players, all they're doing is looking at full season scoring right now. And that's going to play to your advantage, because this is a big blow up week that's going to inflate Hawkinson's overall value in the tight end spectrum, whereas Goddard, kind of down here, but has been so much more consistent.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. For me, Josh went with not as good as they looked. I'm going with not as bad as they looked, and I'm going to ride with the Jacksonville Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, James Robinson. It was an ugly game, plain and simple. I know we kind of wrote off the Bears and 49ers with that in week 1, and this wasn't nearly that bad. But the fact of the matter is this: it wasn't just an ugly game. The Eagles are a really good fucking football team. And I'm not going to be afraid if the Eagles defense beats up on somebody. And I understand, Jared Goff did what he did. But the fact of the matter is this: the game wasn't there. An important weapon, no matter how you feel about Zay Jones, an important weapon wasn't there. It is mind-boggling that James Robinson either didn't run more or they didn't throw the Travis Etienne. But this is the growing pains of learning what they're going to do with this offense. There are much better days ahead. That team looked really good in the first quarter. It was after the rain started to set in and everything just kind of fell apart that the Eagles completely took over that game. And I'm going to stick with the same theory of not as bad as they looked. Amari Cooper, what's funny is Josh actually had him on the other candidates, and I think Josh was going to go the other way with this. But I am not worried about Amari Cooper at all. There's no competition for targets. And Austin has pointed out for weeks, while the Atlanta corners have given up some big plays, they are really good stopping outside wide receivers. Clearly, Atlanta came into this game looking to stop Amari Cooper, and they left Donovan Peoples-Jones way open. So Amari Cooper ends the game with 1 catch on 4 targets. Not every team is going to have the talent or the game plan to just be like, we're stopping Amari Cooper and not stopping anything else. I think Amari Cooper is going to be fine. The target share has been through the roof, and in just about every game this season, there is going to be hit and miss. They, as Josh pointed out when I took over this in the show sheet, they are a run first football team. So you're going to have boom and bust, but I'm not as Amari Cooper's been boom and bust for a long portion of his career. and I'm not overly concerned. I think the boom games, 20 to 25 points out of someone you probably drafted as your wide receiver too, are worth the 4 to 5 point bust games.
I'd argue most people probably took Cooper as a wide receiver 3.
Exactly.
In all honesty. So.
Yeah, Cooper's one I am not at all freaking out about. And then Josh, you filled out the other candidates this week, so I'll let you run through.
Yeah, I mean, for me, AJ Dillon, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Like, I know it was a disappointing game, but he's as he's going to catch passes, he's still not the featured pass catcher amongst these, Green Bay running backs. It's still Aaron Jones. He's going to be that guy. Dillon had more carries. But, for Dillon, just like most power backs that don't catch a ton of passes, they got to score touchdowns. And if they're not scoring touchdowns, then their fantasy days are going to be kind of meh. So just, kind of pump the brakes if you're looking for, other kind of buy low candidates. Like AJ Dillon could very well be that guy as well. I'll mention Taysom Hill simply because he comes up every freaking time that he scores a damn touchdown as a running back, even though he's listed as a tight end. They didn't have Jameis Winston, and even if they had Jameis Winston, guess what? They're still going to use Taysom Hill in these sort of like weird wildcat roles. Yeah. And this is what, and for whatever reason, defenses still don't know that he's going to get the damn football when he does this. I feel like
you just kill Taysom Hill when he's on the field, and you're going to have very few problems after that.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't know. It baffles me. But like, again, rushing touchdown as a tight end, did not see a single target at all. So, like, just stop. Like, stop going to pick him up. Don't waste your fab on him. Like, he's going to have these types of weeks. But most weeks, when he doesn't have these types of, like, oh, I'm going to score a rushing touchdown, he's going to have maybe 1 or 2 targets. He's not heavily involved in this offense. It's very scripted. And you can't always bank on, oh, this guy's going to get it this week because you really don't know. And then my last one, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, Jamal Agnew. I'm going to shout out our boy Elixirs on this one because he always brings him up in the chat and the, return yard leagues. Like, he's the 101 guy. Like, hey, this was the game that, Jamal Agnew's been looking for. And, as I mentioned, Zay Jones being out, Christian Kirk playing more outside, that opened up a lot in the slot. And again, the Eagles were without Avonte Maddox, so that was a hole for them. And Agnew took advantage of it, so.
I think that's a great point, and I know Elixirs. I'm a little upset that he wasn't able to tune in because it was a pretty decent Young Wei Koo week on top of that. So,
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Before we wrap the show up, it is time for my deep waivers. This is a segment brought to you by Connect Go. If you're not familiar with Connect Go, this is about to be the week that you need to be between injuries and now bye weeks coming up. Connect Go is an app that lets you connect with some of your favorite fantasy analysts on a one-on-one basis. We're able to set up group chats or video calls. The links will be in the description, but basically what you're able to do is for a small fee, you get some of our time to ask questions about waivers, about trades, about who you should start this week. We're there to help you. We're there to help you win a championship. Connect Go puts you with some of the best people in this industry. Nate Markham and Jorge Edwards from Fantasy and Frames, Stepmom Lauren, Chris Robin, one of the best DFS people I know. And we're getting more and more people involved. And you can still talk to me. I'm easily the best mustache on the app. And so we'll make sure that works out for you. So make sure you guys are checking out Connect Go. We call this deep waivers. These players need to be available in 90% or more ESPN leagues. Because of the Jonathan Taylor injury, I guess I was a little inspired. I went almost all running back this week, but if I'm being honest, I didn't really like any of the wide receiver options. So we're going to start with Rashad White, who was actually on Josh's possibility of a cut list last week, but me and Kira kind of pushed back against him. And that is because you're going... Yeah, I was going to say, he scored a touchdown this week, but more importantly, he is the guy who's going to fill in if Leonard Fournette gets hurt. You're going to notice a theme. Every single running back I'm about to tell you is a backup running back, but that needs to be the expectation. If you're this deep in waivers looking for a deep league, you're looking for guys who are one injury away, and these next 4 guys are all that. So Rashad White finds the end zone this week, and more importantly, his usage was almost equal with Leonard Fournette in a week where it was a blowout game and nobody got hurt. So Justice Hill, 10 touches in the first game with J.K. Dobbins back. That's pretty important because that means that they've been complimenting Justin Hill and the coaching staff all week long, said he looked like a feature back or a superstar back or whatever the hell Harbaugh said about him last week. But the fact of the matter is touches speak, and he touched the ball 10 times with Dobbins back. Dobbins goes down again. You want Justice Hill. Dontrell
Real
Hilliard
quick, before you move on to that one,
please,
I do want to point out, too, we kind of panned J.K. Dobbins because of the lack of PPR upside. He had a receiving touchdown this week, and was seeing targets. Like they're actually
100%.
actively looking to throw and dump off to running backs, which is a nice change of pace for this offense, which has traditionally been they're not throwing to the running back. So seeing Justice Hill get involved, which this was kind of the role that we thought he would have in
coming
this
out of
offense
college.
when they
This
first
is what we thought he
drafted
would
him
have. Yep,
out
absolutely.
of Oklahoma State. And it's taken a long time to get here. So, if anybody spent those early draft picks, or not early draft picks, but those late draft picks on like a Mike Davis or a Kenyon Drake, you can get rid of those. It's Dobbins, it's Hill. Those are the guys in Baltimore.
100%. That's a great point. And Josh, you kind of touched on this too. I'm not talking bad about any of these starting running backs. I respect Fournette. I respect Dobbins. These are, even if you're not the manager, if you're the manager of these 4 guys, you better have these guys on your bench. But if you're not, you want these other ones on your team. Dontrell Hilliard, I've been kind of talking about this for a while now. Dontrell Hilliard has looked good when he touches the ball. This week, he almost saw no carries, or did see no carries, but he was involved in the passing game, and that is infinitely more valuable, as I've told you. So if I'm the Derrick Henry manager, I want Dontrell Hilliard, but even if I'm not, he's not the worst flex spot if it's a deep league. Benjamin.
He had a 19% target share, and
Yep.
I still find this number baffling. Derrick Henry last week, 23.8% target share.
I say five targets, I believe.
What is going on here?
Yeah, what?
I didn't know 2022 was the year of Derrick Henry, the pass catcher.
And it's worth watching now with Traylon Burks hurt, so it's something to keep an eye on. And so, Benjamin got to see a little bit of this game where they were cutting to it. He looked good. Like, I know he has been a running joke in the fantasy community for years because he was a 7th round pick, and half of us believed in him and held on to him for way too long, and the other half of us didn't. And it's just a very interesting situation. But the fact of the matter, and what I've been saying about this, is in the games I've watched of Arizona and the target share, the snap share, Benjamin plays the same whether Connor is hurt or not hurt. It's Williams who comes in if Connor is hurt, but Benjamin's role remains constant. And the constant is what you want. You want a guy who you can depend on when you're looking at these. And then the last one for me is a wide receiver. It's going to be Corey Davis. And I know this is a little hard. Corey Davis has already had one good game this year, but way more importantly, he led the team in targets in Zach Wilson's very first game back and found the end zone. He's still going to be hit or miss, but we're talking deep leagues. We're talking, 12, 14 teams, and you're talking a second flex spot. You could do worse than Corey Davis if Zach Wilson is going to target him. So those are your deep waivers brought to you by Connect Go. Josh, go ahead.
I'm going to point this out really quick because I do want to get your opinion on this. Everybody was like, oh, Zach Wilson's back. This is the game for Elijah Moore. We've seen now with Corey Davis. We've seen the target share with Garrett Wilson. What's panic mode 1 to 10 on Elijah Moore for 2022 right now?
So what's interesting is the targets were there when it was Joe Flacco, and then the targets went away with it being Zach Wilson, but the yardage was there, 17 yards per reception. So I would say the panic is a 5. I'm not dropping him. I actually saw him dropped earlier this season and picked him up in a few leagues. And I'll be honest, I had a trade offer where someone was offering me draft picks and Josh Palmer. This is a keeper league, not a dynasty league, but a draft picks and Josh Palmer. And I ended up turning it down going into the games because I wanted to see what happened with Eli Moore. And I don't know that I would make that trade right now because we saw Josh Palmer dud in a game where Keenan Allen didn't play. And so that's a little concerning in itself there. So right now I'm probably holding. He's not finding my lineup. So that's where I'd put him at the 5-6. He's Allen Robinson to me right now, where you think it could happen. You're not going to trust him to find your lineup.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I will say the one promising note, he may have been 3rd amongst the 3 in target share. Corey Davis this past weekend, 21.2%, Garrett Wilson, 18.2, Elijah Moore, 12.1. But he outsnapped Garrett Wilson and Corey Davis. So he's the one that's on the field the most, which is promising from that perspective. So, again, if you're looking more into the numbers, this is kind of what you want to believe in. It's, he's on the field. The routes are there. The time is coming. So yeah,
he needs to break a touchdown.
There's definitely some patience, but yeah, he's got to cross the end zone, and that's what's going to give people faith. So
because the red zone numbers are pretty stark. That he has the same amount of red zone targets as Braxton Berrios right now, and that's a problem if you're Elijah Moore. That's not someone you're trying to be associated with. Real quick, one more time, if you were here at the beginning of the show, you're going to hear me repeat myself real quick. For those that don't know, Faith one of our editors here and the editor over at IDP, guys, was very much affected by Hurricane Ian. She lost basically all of her stuff. At the very least, it got very wet. She has a palm tree in her living room, and insurance is not going to help her out. I have dropped her GoFundMe into the comment section of every single one of the places you can watch this video, with the exception of Twitter. If you guys want any money this weekend and you want to feel charitable, there's no better person you could give your money to, no more appreciative person you could give your money to than Faith. She's been an absolute trooper through all of this, and she deserves the reward and anything you can do to help. So we love you, Faith. And if anybody can help out, it would be very much appreciated. Josh, I kind of filled in the bench guys you can drop. So let me know if you disagree with any of these guys. I'm just going to run through them real quick.
No,
James
Cook, one of them was on there last week. So
James Cook was on there last week. I tried to stay with guys who were more than 40% rostered. I didn't want to be redundant in that, like, they're not even on rosters. So James Cook, Chase Claypool, we talked about it. George Pickens is doing what he does, just better. Julio Jones is Julio fucking Jones. It is what it is. Robbie Anderson.
Although I will say, Chris Godwin did go down again this past week.
Now I missed that, night. So that's important.
He did go down again. I don't recall off the top of my head what the injury was, but I mean, again, this is just, I don't know who put a hex on Chris Godwin.
Yeah,
but there is maybe potentially still life that Julio has it, but again, he's been banged up for 3 weeks now. Game time decisions each of these weeks. Missing games, barely playing. It's hard to even trust Julio, so I get it if you want to hang on to him. But for me, there's probably guys that you can grab a la Corey Davis that can probably help your lineup. Right now.
I would rather have any of those running backs than Julio on my roster as well. The upside is just better there. And then the last one I'm throwing in is Robbie Anderson, first and foremost. He's been riding off of that week one. He looks high up in your rankings. He ain't it. And then Hunter Henry was carried by touchdowns last year. This team ain't scoring no damn touchdowns where you need to be worried about Hunter Henry. So Hunter Henry is safely on to waivers as quickly as possible. So Josh, that is the end of the show. As always, we are going to end with our Monday night predictions. It is the LA Rams taking on the San Francisco 49ers. What are your thoughts?
If I remember correctly, the Rams have struggled in San Francisco. Like that's kind of been their kryptonite, is playing this team. But I don't know how you can bet on Jimmy Garoppolo right now. Like, he looked awful last week, like absolutely awful. And I know the Rams defense has been very hit or miss. There's some issues on the offense with San Francisco. Hell, there's issues on the offense with the Rams, because right now it's Cooper Kupp or bust.
Yep.
But the promising thing with Cam Akers is he's gotten the ball rolling and, unfortunately dropping the ball. But I think the Rams will squeak this out, and I think it's probably going to be really close. I'd put it within maybe like 3 to 6 points.
I agree with you. I think the Rams squeak it out, but I'm going to say it's not really close, but it's very selfish reasons. I have a very narrow victory going on where the other guy has the 49ers kicker, and that's all he has left. So I need the 49ers kicker, Robbie Gould, or whoever the hell it is there, to do absolutely nothing. So I'm going to say 24-10. He gets 4 points out of the kicker and not what he needs to go ahead and beat me. 24-10 Rams, but I think the Rams pull it out. I think we see another big Cooper Kupp game, because while the 49ers have, Chardavius Ward or whatever the hell his name is, nobody can stop Cooper Kupp. It's probably going to be another rough Allen Robinson game while Ward locks him down like he did Darnell Mooney in week one. So that's it.
The most humble man in America thinks of only himself.
Hey, exactly. So 24-10, 4 points. If the 49ers get blanked, I don't even hate the 49ers. I'll have smile face to face. I'll be like a preview for that creepy movie that they did in baseball over the weekend. So we thank every single one of you for tuning in. This has been Monday Hangxiety. We are here to help you just chill the fuck out about your fantasy team. Enjoy the game tonight. And once again, one final time, if you check the comments, you will see Faith's GoFundMe. If you have anything to give, we very much appreciate it if you do it. She needs
even shares are appreciated as well.
Yeah.
If you don't find yourself in, with the financial means to be able to help. Luckily, we've raised a lot of money, but I think anybody can attest that when you lose everything, even a lot of money feels like a little. So anything we can do to help Faith, whether it's donations, whether it's shares, it goes a long way. And believe me when I tell you, Faith is over the moon appreciative of everything.
There you go. So good luck tonight, guys, everybody except for the 49ers kicker. Have a good one.